Welcome back to Hoppline, and I'm super excited for two reasons. First of all, it's been a while since I made a decent review on some gear, and second, this is actually my first review on Indiana gear, and I had the Condor M and the Condor S for several months now. I really took my time to make a decent review of this amazing front wing, so let's get right into it. No disclaimer needed on this review. I'm not paid. It's no free gear. It's just me testing, having fun, saying whatever I want to say. But before I get into the Condor M and the Condor S, let's quickly talk about the test settings and what kind of gear I used and the whole system Indiana is offering. I used the Drive high modulus carbon mast, mainly the 75, but I also had an 85. It's very streamlined, super stiff, and it's got a very thin base, making it even more streamlined. There's pretty long bolts. I talked to Indiana, I asked them, and you could use smaller ones. They just make them longer, so they fit universal across the whole range if you're using aluminium and the different fuselages. There are actually longer aluminium standard fuselages on the aluminium line, but the carbon line is made from the monobloc system. So you got the front wing and you do have a tail, and then you screw the stabilizer onto the tail. There's two different tails. This is the long one, and each tail has two different positions. This is what they call the XS and double XS tail, and there's two positions, and they more or less seamlessly go along the larger tail. So if you just have a look right here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 positions on two different fuselages, giving you a lot of choices and possibilities to tweak your system. I mainly used this one, the XS, on the second, the longer position, which was my favorite. I tested all of them, and if you want to free the pitch, you can just go shorter or make it more stable by going longer, or even swapping for a longer fuselage if you want the whole system to be just a little bit more stiff, controllable, or if you are a heavier rider. Monobloc system, it works very well. There's two screws bolting into the mast, and then there's a second one that kind of connects the front wing to the little monobloc tail, making what I call an airplane. So if you have the stabilizer attached and you attach this one to the front wing, let's just do this real quick. Now just if you take this little M6 screw, bolt it in here, they stay together, and that makes swapping front wings super easy. You can keep it as what I call it, an airplane, just on the beach, and then just swap the whole system if you wanted to. Two monobloc tails, but if you refer to it in terms of an old system where you have a fuselage and then the front wing in the front and the tail in the back, it's almost like having 4 fuselages because of the different position. I think that's a really nice and neat feature. So let's get into the front wings, and I'm just gonna grab the Condor S, and you can see I'm smiling. This is my favorite one. I want to start with the concept, or what I think is the concept behind the Condor, and I think that's very similar to an Access Spitfire, where you're trying to maintain a lot of lift but at the same time have a very agile front wing that turns and rolls nice, and they kind of achieve this by having a deeper chord and then becoming thinner towards the tips. So they're generating a lot of lift in the center of the front wing, but because there's less surface and less span towards the tips, they still turn and roll very nice. It works on the Spitfire, and I think it works even better on the Indiana. It's a quite thick profile that generates a lot of lift. I was easily able to pedal up the S more or less first try, Dockstart, ladder start, SUP, wake thieving. It's an amazing front wing, and the whole concept works in light wind winning because it's not stiff, it's not a high aspect wing, and it doesn't have the high aspect feeling. If you look at the dihedral, there's a little bit towards the tips, it kind of fades out. It's not much, but it's enough to give you more of a playful, surfy feel instead of that high aspect feel where you're locked in. It's an aspect ratio of 8.9, I think 9.1, so they are not scaled up. They are a little bit different in shape. I would almost call it a mid aspect because you're getting a lot of lift, but they turn nice because they don't have the higher span. So my first session on the Condor was a Dockstart session, and I started off with the M, and I more or less instantly swapped for the S because I could feel the lift and how stable it was, but how nice it was in the pumping. And I started off with a longer tail, and then I more or less immediately went for the shorter tail because it was still absolutely doable in the pitch control. I went for, like I said, the shorter tail but on the longer position using the Condor M stabilizer. This is a really nice stabilizer. It allows for a very free pitch but has enough control, maybe a little bit too much because it's the M instead of the S. It went very well on flat water paddle ups with the M, but even there, after a couple of sessions, I went for the S because that was more enough. I'm 65 kilograms and I would always pick the Condor S over the M, except for beach starts. I'm not really good in beach starts, and that's where I need a little bit of a cheat code. Other than that, the S is my favorite. I do have a friend, he's roughly 85 to 90 kilograms depending on the wetsuit and vest. He's riding the Condor M paired with the Condor M stabilizer, and he's very happy, and I can see it's a very similar setup to my setup, the Condor S with 65 kilograms compared to the Condor M with 85 kilograms. Like I said, this is an aspect ratio of 8.9 and I think this is roughly 9.1, so they're not the same, they're not scaled up, but they're very similar in speed. We've done some wake thieving together, and this is where speed becomes an issue because you want to stay in the wake of the boat, and if you're too slow, you're dropping out. And I was on the S, he was on the M, and we had a very similar speed level because he had that little bit of extra weight he could put into the front wing. I was a tad faster on the S, and I also tried the M in wakes, and it's slower for me. It becomes a little bit faster when you're a heavier rider. So in wakes, I would actually prefer the Condor S again. I would not only prefer the Condor S, but I think it's one of the best wake thief front wings on the market because it's got, for my setting, my tanker waves here on the river, it's got the perfect speed. Boats are going roughly at 6 knots, and you want to be able to not only stay in the wake, but go down without pumping and then maybe make some turns. You don't want to be too fast. If you're on a higher aspect front wing, you're outrunning the wave, and then you more or less have to do like an 8 constantly. You can do turns and 8s and everything on the Condor S, but it's just easy enough so you're not constantly trying to keep the front wing at speed. You can relax, and I've done my longest SUP wake thief session on the Condor S. I think it was roughly 30 minutes or something, and I could have kept going forever. It was just getting dark and I have to leave the water before the sun goes down, so I had to leave. So let's move on to a few more disciplines. Light wind winging, it's amazing, it's early lift, but at the same time you don't have that high aspect locked in feel, so it turns nice. You can do tacks and jives. The same with power winging. If you want to get into power winging and you're looking for an easy up, easy going front wing, the Condor S is amazing. Like I said, I did some flat water paddle ups on the Condor M. It was first try on the Condor S, and I'm not good in flat water paddle ups. It's 9 out of 10. And on most other front wings that are similar size, I'm doing 5, maybe 6 out of 10. And this is because of this little chord concept. It's, like I said, it's fairly thick right here, but because the chord is deeper, you still have a nice speed. It's not high speed front wing, but it does have a decent amount of speed, so it's not getting boring in light wind winging and power winging. And at the same time, because the thin tips move in fairly freely in the water, it's very playful, and I really enjoyed it. So I had these front wings for a couple of months now, and I used them in, I think, pretty much any foiling discipline, and there was not a single one where they did not perform. They are not top notch in maybe long distance, or if you want to go racing, they're not the fastest, but they're super versatile and playful at the same time. I really enjoyed the SUP downwinders and small waves. If you have faster waves, they might not be fast enough, but for my user case, they were just perfect. Learning to beach start or working on my technique in beach start on the Condor M was amazing, because I could go really slow and it would generate a lot of lift and feel on my hands, so I could easily work on my technique and then drop down to the S and was able to beach start the Condor S, which I'm not really good and familiar with. So anytime I took the Condor S for any foiling discipline, they just worked. Yes, there are faster front wings if you want to do light winging, but this one, it just works. And at the same time, it's playful and fun. And because you do have the two tails and the 4 different positions, it's very adaptable. If you are winging and you're going a little bit faster and you want more stability, you're just moving the stabilizer back in one position, or you're swapping for the longer tail, which gives you more stability in the pitch, making it easier to go faster. And if you want to free it up in, let's say, SUP small wave, or in pumping, especially in pumping, because you want to have that pitch, the freedom of going up and down, just go shorter in the position where you mount the stabilizer, or go for the shorter tail. So it's a super versatile system. I did like the monobloc system. At the beginning I thought, oh, it's a lot of screws again, but it's fairly quick to change, and because you can mount them together and keep them together as what I call the airplane, it's super handy. Finish and build quality is amazing, and I didn't have any problems on the system, on the mast or on the front wings. And like I said, I really did a lot of sessions. I took the front wings out to some clinics and demo events, and they usually don't handle them very well. They got a few scratches and a few little things, but nothing very serious, and no flaws in the system whatsoever. So let's talk about the downside, and I think there's, for me personal, there are 3 things. 2 of them are related. The first one, most obvious one, is design. A lot of people don't or might not like the design Indiana is putting on the front wings. It's the green, you can tell them away from a long distance. If someone is wake thieving, you can instantly say, oh, look at that, he's on an Indiana front wing, which is nice. But at the same time, if you don't like green and if you don't like the design, it's kind of hard to get around, because it's everywhere. It's on all the parts, it's on the mast, it's on the front wings. And this leads me to the second part. The design is not only on top of the front wing, it's also on the bottom and especially on the tips. Now, if you imagine you're doing a beach start, or you're walking into the water, just pumping, winging, whatsoever, and you can see that right here, this is where you hit the sand, this is where you hit little rocks, and the color, it's not really scratched, it's not really deep, it's just the paint coming off, but it kind of looks old. It's not, like I said, it's not a problem in terms of functionality, it's just they do look more used than they would without the graphics in a pretty short period. The same here, this is just a minor scratch, so I think not having the graphics on the bottom of the foil would be a good idea, and maybe offer some more decent colors. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people out there that do love the design, and that's just personal preference. Which leads me to the last issue, which can be solved quite quick. And on the Indiana system, this was the first time I was actually begging for an electric tool, because on the mast the screws were so long. And like I said before, I reached out to Indiana and I said, do they have to be that long? How deep is the thread in the mast? And they said, no, they don't have to be. They are just so long, so they fit across the whole system, which is nice, because then you don't have to care about bringing the right screws. Whatever you take on the Indiana Cosmos, if you are having different systems, these are the ones you use to connect the fuselage or the monobloc to the mast, and they work every time. If you're going for a shorter one, they might be too short for another system. I would probably, if this was my daily driver, I would go for a shorter one. because unless you're using an electric drill, this just takes too long for me and my liking. So these are just some minor things that came to my mind during my usage and my user case. And I think other than that, the Condor M and Condor S is an absolute amazing front wing. And I always think of a front wing as a compromise, and I think these days most companies have very good equipment, so it's not only about functionality or does the front wing work, it's about your personal preferences and your user case. And for me, there's so many user cases for the Condor M, and if you're designing a front wing, like I said, it's a compromise. You can go thinner for more speed, but then you're losing lift. You can go deeper in chord, then you might get slower, thicker in profile, adding more drag. So there's a lot of choices to be made. And for me, especially on the Condor S, I think it's pretty much exactly what I would pick for myself and my user case. This would be everything that's a little bit slower if I'm not going high-speed winging, if I'm not into freestyle. Anything that's slower, like SUP, flat water pedal ups, light wind winging, pumping, wake thieving, small waves in the ocean, maybe even prone on tiny waves if they are slower. This is the setup I would go for, and this is an amazing setup. It's got, like I said before, it's got the lift, which gives you the ability to get up early, and at the same time it's very playful. It's 1.10 m, but it's got the same lift like a high aspect wing with 1.50 m or something, but it doesn't feel high aspect. And the same compromise on the dihedral. I do actually prefer front wings with more dihedral because they are better in the roll, and I do prefer this surf kind of feeling and not the high aspect one. There's only a little dihedral right here, but it's just enough to give me that surf feeling without sacrificing too much glide. So every compromise that was made on this front wing, and I'm mainly talking about the Condor S for me and my user case, is exactly what I have loved to pick for myself. So this is pretty much it. There's a little bit more Indiana gear which I can talk about in the future, so if you're interested in Indiana, make sure to follow my channel to not miss out on future content. And like always, if you have questions, just use the comments and I will try to get back to you. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.